The opportunity to have a mentor or a role model is one of the formative things. The opportunity to go into a small animal practice and see how that plays out day to day. I just ponied up one day. I called and said, hey, can I come visit your practice? I think there is where the opportunities are. You'll meet so many people. You will learn so many things, even about yourself. You'll learn to grow and improve your ability to communicate with people. And then there's the animal. I think you become much more appreciative of the animal as a patient. I fell in love with the medicine, and that reaches across species. That's a starting point. I gravitated to the horse when I was in veterinary school. Anybody knows me, one thing I fear are snakes. But I wasn't so afraid of the horse. I didn't grow up as a horse person. I promise you, you start to be around horses more. You start to really appreciate them as animals. I really appreciate the horse more today than ever. I say, be willing to learn, to invest yourself. Go find a mentor that will take you under their wing and help you grow. You don't just come by that all of a sudden. That takes some time and a little bit of investment. If you invest yourself, that's going to come along.
Welcome to the Unstall Your Practice digital radio experience for equine veterinary practices and their teams. I'm Cynthia Bain, practice growth specialist for Business Infusion Software, expert in equine practice solutions. I'm literally married to the profession and share the purpose of overcoming obstacles to practice growth and making the equine veterinary profession a profitable, sustainable, and fun experience for you. Join me and my guest as we tackle your toughest challenges head on and learn about better, more effective ways to get the job done and get you on your way to unbridled growth and a winner's circle future. So saddle up, because those future wins start right here, right now. Welcome to another episode of Unstall Your Practice. I'm Cynthia Bain, your host. It is a beautiful Saturday afternoon, feeling a lot like fall in the air here in New Mexico. I'm so happy to be with you here today. It is my most favorite time of the year. I have an extra special guest with me here today in the studio, which is quite a treat. There is just something special about sharing a microphone with the man I share my life with. This is going to be a very fun and personal episode. My guest today is an equine internal medicine specialist with 4 decades of experience. He is well respected for his work in diagnostic ultrasound, perinatology, neonatal intensive care, equine pathology and cytology, and hyperbaric oxygen therapy. He is triple board certified by the American College of Veterinary Internal Medicine, the American College of Veterinary Pathologists, and the American College of Veterinary Emergency and Critical Care. Previously, he was an associate director of the Strategic Development and Innovation Team for Equine Business Projects at Merck Animal Health. He was involved with new product innovation, discovery, and development, and integrated between multiple units within the company. His career has included time in private referral hospitals, including Peterson & Smith Equine Hospital, Haggard Equine Medical Institute, Littleton Equine Medical Center, and Equine Sports Medicine and Surgery. He has also worked at university hospitals in the United States, University of Pennsylvania, Washington State University, the University of Queensland in Australia. He has also served as a clinical professor of equine internal medicine and equine section head at the Washington State University College of Veterinary Medicine. He received his BS in animal science at North Carolina State University before obtaining his DVM from Auburn University College of Veterinary Medicine. He returned to North Carolina State for a large animal internship, then pursued a residency in large animal internal medicine at the University of Florida and a residency in veterinary anatomic pathology at Kansas State University. He also holds an MBA from the New York Institute of Technology. He was honored by the Auburn University College of Veterinary Medicine with the J.T. Vaughn Equine Excellence Award in 2022. He is the most recent recipient of the college's Wilford S. Bailey Distinguished Alumni Award. He lives with me and our 3 fur kids in the Sandia Mountains in New Mexico. It is not often he is home this time of the year, as he is typically exploring nature in the mountains of Colorado. But I'm so glad he's here and has agreed to spend this time with us here today. So please welcome to Unstall Your Practice, my husband, Dr. Fairfield Bain. Welcome to the show.
It's fun when you get to do this with your wife. So I have to be on my best behavior, but thank you for allowing me to be on your show.
You are very welcome. I'm honored that you've agreed to spend this time with me here today, especially since the Auburn game, I believe, is ongoing. Right now. Okay. So this is going to be such a great episode. Before we dive in too deep, how about you just share a little bit about your roots and how you came to be an equine veterinarian?
I think she wants me to tell everybody about how old I am. But in spite of that, I grew up on a farm, a family farm that had been in my family for 300 years. And I was exposed to livestock and lots of pets, not to mention lots of wildlife. And, that was much more fun for me than working on the crops. And so I just gravitated to the animals the entire time. And then because we had a lot of livestock, we had a hog farm and cattle. Veterinarians were often on the farm. And I just thought, man, they were so cool. They were like the James Herriot types that did everything, mixed animal practitioners. And I really loved seeing them around. I loved watching them, what they did. And that they were the templates for what I wanted to become.
Were there any early influences that encouraged you to become a veterinarian?
I would say that. Yeah, in the South, we had all these aunts and uncles. They weren't really family members, but we had a neighboring family farm. And the lady there, we called her Aunt Eleanor. And she was like a mentor, family friend, but always taking us under her wing. And I can recall one time at dinner that Aunt Eleanor said, "What do you really want to do with yourself?" And she made me go through the things that I liked about growing up on the farm. And it really boiled down to the animals and the livestock, and that I really enjoyed watching the veterinarians come out to the farm and work.
You have been in practice in one form or another for over 4 decades, which is incredible, especially in today's equine practice, because that's very uncommon. From your perspective, what is one of the most significant changes in the equine veterinary profession?
Oh, that's a challenging question. It changes, yet it's the same. One of the things I've seen is that as a society, we've grown apart from a very urban, suburban mindset to a very rural agricultural cultures, 2 different cultures, really. And from when I grew up, the rural agricultural lifestyle was more widespread. Kids had more opportunities, I think, in the 60s to experience that. And I don't think we have as much opportunity today. And so I think that has influenced lots of kids as we start, as they start into school and professional education and then on into practice. And so we have a lot of people entering practice that may not have had that opportunity and that experience and what the lifestyle is like. So sometimes there's a shift when you go from school and enter a culture when you haven't really been immersed in it before. And not everybody wants to do that, right? So one of the things we've seen is that the growing deficit in numbers of veterinary students that want to enter large animal practice, much less equine practice. And so we've watched fewer and fewer want to be part of that type of system. So I think, as you say, change, that's what I've watched, is less experience of that type of practice in the first place, less exposure, and that has equated over time to fewer numbers that want to pursue that kind of lifestyle. And it is a lifestyle.
So do you have any ideas or solutions how to get more of these young people interested in equine practice?
I described how I grew up, right? Is I got to see veterinarians on the farm and see them interact with the client, my father, and how they perform their roles. And the opportunity to have a mentor or role model situation like that is one of the formative things, right? So if you're in a larger city or suburban area, you have a lot more opportunity to go into a small animal practice and see how that plays out day to day. we have a lot lesser opportunity to engage in large animal practice or equine practice in those types of settings. And so I think exposure to that early on gives young people more opportunity to say, I might like to be like that kind of, veterinarian. And so I think, that's one thing. If I could do anything, it just is bigger than veterinary medicine, really, is to expose young people to the rural agricultural lifestyle, because I think that has a lot of far-reaching things even beyond veterinary medicine. That kids, they don't know where their food comes from today. They don't know how it's made, where, even vegetables, crops, grains, not to mention livestock and that part of agriculture. So early exposure to the rural agricultural lifestyle, and the horse is a little different, right? And I say rural agricultural, the horse is sort of in the middle. They bridge the gap between livestock, especially here out west, as opposed to the peripheries of urban, suburban areas. The horse really is more of a companion animal. They're a little bit of each, right? So anytime that we can get young people exposed to something, they have an opportunity to see how much people enjoy doing that and have an opportunity for a role model experience.
I have the pleasure and honor of knowing you probably better than most. Definitely not longer than most, because I know that there's many people that have known you longer than I have. But one of the things that I do know about you is that you are most passionate about mentoring young aspiring veterinarians, teaching a new horse old tricks, if you will. So what piece of advice would you offer them as they consider or embark on their new careers, specifically in the equine veterinary profession?
Well, maybe the first part for me, if I think back, my start, I fell in love with the medicine, and that reaches across species. That's a starting point. Fall in love with medicine mechanisms. That's why I became a pathologist too. But then, I gravitated to the horse when I was in veterinary school. I liked the horse. The people that were my mentors in veterinary school were very willing to share what was going on, the mechanisms, the particular diseases. So find that person, be willing and be open to experience lots of different things. If anybody knows me, the one thing I fear are snakes. But I wasn't so afraid of the horse. I had had exposure to horses, but I didn't grow up as a horse person. So I'm a bit atypical. People might not think, I didn't grow up around horses. I can't be a horse veterinarian. One of the things that's one of the biggest opportunities today is we need more people that want to work on horses. That's a starting point. But go find a mentor. That's one of the very first things. And then the next piece is, I promise you, you start to be around horses more. You start to really appreciate them as animals and their intelligence, And that was kind of how it grew on me. I really started learning the diseases of the horse. They were really intriguing, how they worked. But it came back to the very first piece. I fell in love with medicine. I fell in love with the horse. I really did. And then I found that people really didn't care that I didn't grow up around horses. They cared about what I knew and how competent I was working on the horse. And those things you can build. You can build those pieces just by being willing. So I say, be willing to learn, be willing to invest yourself, but go find a mentor that will take you under their wing and help you grow. You don't just come by that all of a sudden. That takes some time and a little bit of investment. But if you invest yourself, that's going to come along.
You speak a lot about mentoring, and I know you're very, very passionate about that. You have such an amazing career, and you've contributed so much to the industry. Can you tell us about maybe a mentor that influenced you along the way?
Well, there's a long list of mentors. One of the first people when I was in veterinary school was the dean of Auburn University at the time, Dr. Bain. He was very observant of young people, and he realized that I was very, very interested in working on horses, and he made sure to take me under his wing. He actually helped me find summer jobs. He actually got me a job working at Rossdale Equine Hospital in England, of all places. And that was another formative kind of experience for me. So he helped there. And then, that begot yet another mentor role, okay? Because Peter Rossdale and Sidney Ricketts were leaders in reproduction and neonatology at the time in the early 1980s. And actually, Sidney Ricketts became sort of the role model of what I wanted to become because he did the medicine in the practice and he ran the clinical laboratory. So he gave me an image of how I might want to pursue my career as I grew.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. There's so many takeaways, but I think that the greatest takeaway is the value of mentorship and being a mentor. So something that I know about you, and we haven't mentioned it here today, but I would love for you to share, is your experience working for Dr. Edwards back in Virginia, your summers when you were very young.
Dr. Ryland Edwards in Smithfield, Virginia was where I really got my start more connected to veterinary medicine. He was one of those mixed animal practitioners that went to farms, did everything. He did small animals in the clinic. He traveled to people's farms and did large animal work of everything, hogs, cattle, horses. He took me under his wing when I was in college. So in the summers, I would work in his practice. And he was willing to take a young kid, and let me see what he did. And I think there is where the opportunities are, right? I was advised in school to go find a veterinarian to work for in my summers. And I just ponied up one day. I called and said, "Hey, can I come visit your practice?" He said, "Yeah." And it grew into a relationship. I know that the family history there is his two sons grew up in that practice. I knew them as kids. They're now both very successful veterinarians. Ryland Edwards at Fairfield Equine Hospital in Connecticut and Garrett Edwards, who works in the practice today in Smithfield, Virginia. And that family just took me in. And he let me watch what he did, everything, the tough days, the hard days, and let me experience the day-to-day of the practice, dealing with people, the different animals, the different disease processes. I scrubbed a lot of surgery tables. I polished some stainless steel over the summer days. But he was willing to let me come in there. And I think young people take that opportunity because when you find somebody that's willing to allow you that experience, and you will be intimidated at the start, but as your familiarity with each other grows, you're going to be incorporated more and more into the flow of the place. You're going to get to know the people. You're going to learn a lot of lessons that aren't just medicine. You're going to learn about dealing with people. And I can promise you that's a bigger part of veterinary medicine than people think. As I said earlier, I fell in love with medicine. But over the years, I really grew to enjoy the people. It's not all glory days, right? You're going to have some days where you're going to come across somebody that's grumpy, somebody's got a bad attitude, but that's the minority. You're going to find so many great people, and they will, over the years, cheer you on. Clients love seeing young people get interested in veterinary medicine and say, "Oh, I knew you back when." Okay, that happens a lot. And so that's my biggest encouragement to young people. Go find somebody and hook up with their practice. You will meet so many people. You will learn so many things, even as much about yourself, because you'll learn to grow and improve your ability to communicate with people. And then there's the animals, right? The patient. I think you become much more appreciative of the animal as a patient. I can tell you that as I've grown older, and this is my 41st year, I really appreciate the horse more today than ever. And I really enjoy them as a patient. They're different personalities, and they have taught me so many things over the years as I've paid attention and observed them in all the different aspects of what I've done.
And what really resonates with me is that a mentor truly is a relationship that can turn into a family. I know for me personally, I'm not a veterinarian, but I've worked in the industry for numerous years. And in my role, working in pharmacy and inventory, some of my mentors have come from sales, manufacturing, distribution. They have held my hand along the way. I will never forget going into my very first AAP, and Randy Burris, who we all know, he's a legend, pulled me to the side and he said, "Cynthia, I just want to share with you, when you walk into AAP, these are people that will be with you for life. Next year, they may all have different shirts, but the same people are going to be here. So consider them your family and treat them as such." So it really is a community. It's become my family, obviously. I found you in this industry. So I think that that's really important. I know that what really binds us all together is the love of the horse. Do you have anything to say regarding mentorships being relationships and this being such a family industry?
Like any good Southerner, I love stories, right? And the stories I have from my mentoring relationships, I passed on to people that I have mentored. And sometimes they're funny, sometimes they're medical in nature. But, you end up paying it forward, right? You learn things, you have a role model and a template, you have experiences. And then as you grow in the profession, you're going to find younger people that come along beside of you, and you're going to teach them some of the experiences that you've had. And so you're trying to help them grow. That's kind of where I've gotten today, where I really want young people to have as much fun as I have had and to really enjoy this profession. And I want to be seen as the encourager and cheerleader for them, at this stage of my career, because when I look back, I was so blessed in many ways. I had great parents that encouraged me along the way, that encouraged me to get into the profession. They supported me as I got started. And then as I went through growing up in the profession, as I would call it, I had great mentors that helped me, that encouraged me, that gave me a model to follow, how I would model my own behavior in the profession. And then you get up to a point where you've gained some experience and, there's a constant in and out. This is the way the world works. And as you get to a certain stage, young people are going to start coming underneath you, as you would say. And then you start becoming the teacher. You're sharing your stories. Like any great Southerner, as I said, I love stories. And that's how I've spent much of my life, telling stories of my experiences, both with mentors, with patients, and you start sharing those with younger veterinarians and then encouraging them. And then the shift happens, right? You're going from the learner, the early learner, because you're always learning, right? Then you're becoming the teacher and teaching people, in more than just physically teaching, but they're learning by watching what you do. Then you start to mentor younger people. And if I had anything to say, is just learn to enjoy this. Learn to love medicine, learn to love the patient, and learn to love people. Then I think you go home at night. Some of those days are going to be long, but when you look back, you're going to be really proud of what you built over time.
Another thing that I know that you're passionate about, when we're talking about teaching a new horse old tricks, that's very, very important. And I really don't want to overlook because it really just goes right along with everything you're saying. As we talk about young veterinarians starting out, what would you say to them about valuing their technicians?
That's one thing I really am passionate about. I was fortunate to have a career that I spent most of my time in a hospital setting, taking care of the sick horse. That's really been my path. So I wasn't always the general practitioner out riding the roads, but even there, okay, the technician is your partner. A lot of times they're the ones that really do the real patient care. And this is medicine, right? Observing the patient, paying attention to the patient. The technician is the person that checks that IV catheter, that checks the jugular vein and makes sure that it's not inflamed, not having a problem. They're the ones that lift the lip and look at the membranes more regularly than you do because you're off doing so many different things. they're the ones that often are really the critical piece that observes a change in direction of the patient as they're going through their disease process. And so I really value them. I could not have done any of what I've done in the hospital setting without the technical staff that I have had. And there's so many of them. I would be here all day naming names, but they have made my life so much better. And I tell young people, value them, learn from them, because they can teach you by all their observations they've had over time. And I look back with a lot of smiles because of the technicians that I got to work with.
I know that you're very passionate about that, so I really wanted to highlight that before we conclude this episode. Before we do that, do you have any final thoughts?
Well, I tell people again, I didn't grow up in the horse world. My father loved thoroughbred racing. That was my original exposure to the horse, actually. But I found it to be a very welcoming society, so to speak, in the profession. And today, more than ever, there's so many opportunities. There's so much demand for veterinary service for the horse world. And I think it's a great opportunity for young people. So I would hope that more and more veterinary students consider equine practice. Be willing and be open to go, hey, I can find and make my way in that world. I did. And 40 years later, I'm still doing it. You know, I didn't grow up in it, but I learned to love it. I was very blessed to be in that part of the profession.
Wonderful. So how can our listeners connect with you should they want you for consulting or simply to continue this conversation?
Oh, I'm easily found on most social media. I think, in the professional world, a lot of people look at LinkedIn. I'm easily found on LinkedIn at Fairfield Bain.
At Fairfield Bain. I'm going to encourage everyone who's listening to this show to connect with you. You have so much value to bring, especially on the topic of being a mentor, which is my greatest takeaway. Not just in veterinary medicine, though. I think that we all need mentors in all areas of our life. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. And that's part of life, right? Is sharing it with other people. And I'm always willing to have a chat with anybody that may have a question. If I can help them or encourage them, please feel free to give me a shout.
Well, thank you so much for the time that you've spent with us here today, especially considering that I know that the Auburn game is on upstairs and I dragged you away from that, as well as hunting. You came back to help me out with a few things, so I appreciate you. Our audience appreciates you and everything that you bring. So thank you again for coming. We appreciate you and would love to have you back on a future episode if you'd be willing.
Oh, of course. Thanks for having me.
So Fairfield is headed to watch his Auburn game, and I'm sure I'm going to owe him big time for tearing him away. It was such a pleasure. Actually, he made me nervous. Interviewing my husband made me nervous, of all things. My greatest takeaway today, something, as I said, he's so passionate about, is mentorship. Not just finding a mentor, but being a mentor. What can we share with others along the way? What skills, talents do we learn? And don't let them end with us. Become a legacy. Be a part of a legacy and share your lessons and your experiences with others. That's something we can easily do. It doesn't cost a thing. We can all do that every day. Yes. Who can we mentor? I think that's a big challenge, and I challenge us all to do that. For all you new horses out there, I just want to reiterate what Dr. Bain said in his interview, and that is seek out a clinic and partner with them. Ask them if you can observe and be a part of their process. Value your technicians. They are your lifeline. It's so important to learn from them as well and to treat them with respect and dignity. They will take you so far in this industry. And for all of you old horses out there, don't be afraid to be a mentor. People are craving your experiences for you to share them, to share your experiences, your knowledge, your wisdom. Be willing to share so that you become a part of a legacy. You become a part of the story. So important. And lest we forget, old horses can learn new tricks as well. so as a senior veterinarian and experienced, a seasoned veterinarian, you can learn so much from the students and the young new veterinarians as well. There's so much new technology out there that they can share. Maybe it's something you're not familiar with, but the relationships can be mutually beneficial. And I think that that's something we should cherish and explore more, is learning from one another. That concludes today's episode, but certainly not this podcast. Listen to our previous episodes. Episode 1 was me just sharing why I'm doing this, why I'm passionate about Unstall Your Practice. Episode 2 was phenomenal and has received so many wonderful reviews and comments. Personally, I've had people reach out to me. That was featuring AAEVT founder Deb Reeder. She brings years of experience to the table. I just would encourage you to go back and listen if you haven't. And I also invite you to subscribe to upcoming episodes by visiting unstallyourpractice.com. So until next time, I'm Cynthia Bain, and on behalf of myself, my producer Frank, and the entire Business Infusions team, I thank you so very much for being here again today. And I'll see you again for another insightful episode of Unstall Your Practice. The Unstall Your Practice digital radio podcast is a broadcast wellness production powered by Business Infusion Software. Copyright 2024. All rights reserved. Executive producer Frank Sardella. For more information, visit businessinfusions.com. What did I say?
I'm making her nervous.
So I said it's teaching a new horse old tricks. No. Kind of drew a blank there, Frank.